As a lifelong Nintendo fan, I wanted to share my thoughts on the Switch 2. From a hardware perspective, I think they nailed it. I mean, you've got 4K docked, 120p on the screen, as well as 120 FPS. I think that's going to make a lot of people happy from a hardware side. I also hope with the mouse controls, they can utilize that really well. And I do hope that the new magnetic rail system is better than the old, as well as they fix the drift issue. That's going to be huge if the Joy-Con drift issue is resolved. I did want to point out, I found it odd that they were comparing it to the original Switch rather than the Switch OLED, especially when it came to screen size. It was kind of disingenuous how they compared those two screen sizes because it's not as big of a gap when you compare it to the OLED. Let's start with games and backwards compatibility. For games, you got Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, Metroid, and Duskbloods. I think those are all going to be great. I know Nintendo always comes through with great games, so I think that's going to be handled fine. I am also super excited for the mouse controls if they can do it right. When they showed off Metroid with those mouse controls, I think that could be huge for all first person shooter games, not just Metroid. When it comes to backwards compatibility, I'm happy that they're trying. I know with the hardware changes, it's not realistic to expect every single game to work perfectly, but I like the idea that they're showing off that they're trying, and I hope that they continue with that and that we get most games to work on the new system. Now, when you're talking about the upgrades to the Switch 2 versions of games, I think it's a great idea to have upgrades and allow for better performance and more features. I'm even okay charging a little bit for it, depending on the work that goes into it, right? If they're adding a whole bunch of new features, that's worth a $10 or $20 upgrade fee. I do worry, though, that that's going to become the norm. I really just want to put a game like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild in this system and have it just utilize the new hardware and run better. We've seen them run better on emulators on a great PC or on a handheld. So if you can just insert the games and play them and they run better and you don't have to buy that upgrade, that's going to be the best case scenario. If they force you to buy an upgrade, I'm a little worried about that. Now to the biggest story, pricing. I really don't think 450 is that bad for the hardware. Because they did 4K, because they had the 120 FPS, I think 450 is okay. Now, I do think it's too expensive for a Nintendo console. The reason I say that too is Nintendo even knows that because they're releasing a $100 less console in Japan. That's going to be Japan only. So the pricing itself is a little high for a console from them, but in terms of the hardware, they went pretty hard on that. So I think 450 is okay. I'm more worried about game pricing. Now, the reason I'm worried is because it's Nintendo. They don't drop prices. So their games just remain MSRP, never go down forever. If this was any other console, any other game developer, I would not be that worried because I would just wait for the inevitable price drop. With Nintendo games, they're just going to stay at 80, 90. Are they going to keep going up? I don't know. And that does worry me when it comes to the game industry, especially because people will see what Nintendo's doing and maybe try and copy it, and that could hurt consumers all around. Now that pricing's out of the way, let's talk about some of the new features they announced, starting with Game Chat. So, Game Chat, definitely something they needed. So, I'm very happy with that. Obviously, we want to have chat built into the system. I do worry about the execution though, because based on the videos they showed, the quality was rough. They've got some really cool features. So if they can really hit those, if they can make those work well, I think it's going to be huge. I do worry as well about the physical button for that game chat because it sounds like it's going to be locked behind Nintendo Online. So if there's no functionality of that button, if you don't pay for an online subscription, that's pretty crazy to have a physical button locked behind that. Then we can talk about the camera. So the camera is a similar story in terms of the execution. I just don't know how that's going to work out. I think it's going to be more of a gimmick. I just don't see that being this huge thing that everyone has to have. And it's going to come down to I don't know how many games are going to actually utilize it. So once you limit the amount of games that utilize it, it really makes that thing not fly off the shelves. So we'll see. Maybe Nintendo proves me wrong and they come out with a bunch of killer games that really work well with the camera and everyone loves it. I just don't see it. It seems like more of a gimmick to me. Mouse controls. Now, this one seems like a little bit of a gimmick as well, but I have high hopes for this one because for first person shooters, especially how they showed out Metroid, yes. Is it the most comfortable mouse? No. But just having that first person shooter mouse control, I think could be amazing on the system. Now, what I really want to see is two things. Either they allow you to use the mouse controls with one hand and use the other Joy-Con with your left hand, and that would give you kind of a nunchuck feel. And that would open up these games to be console centric, but still be really, really good for pinpoint accuracy for first person shooter. Second thing, I would love for them to allow you to plug in a USB mouse. So instead of having to use the Joy-Con, you can just use a mouse with 4 buttons on it. Maybe they even release a Nintendo mouse. Either way, I think if they can do that and they can implement it well and third party first person shooter games pick it up, that could be huge for the console. That changes the dynamic of a Nintendo console because that's not really what they're known for, first person shooters. So that could be a huge, huge increase for them. GameCube games coming to Nintendo Online. Huge. I mean, GameCube is such a great system that people love, and it's so you can't get the games, they're so expensive. So to have those games on Nintendo Online, as well as to have Pokemon games, huge. I just really think that's going to be a great thing. Now it comes down to execution as well because we know they've had emulation issues in the past with N64. So we'll see how they do with the GameCube. Now, just bring in the Game Boy and Game Boy Advanced Pokemon games. I know it's a legal issue, but just get it done, Nintendo. Please. That's what everyone wants. So, my final thoughts. I'm not going to buy it day one. I have a Switch OLED and a huge backlog of games. I'm going to be able to focus on that, and I'm going to see how the system turns out. Do I think it's going to be a success? Yes. I 100% believe this will be a success. Nintendo makes great games. They make good consoles. I appreciate that they went with the Switch 2 design here. They kept it similar with the hybrid. I think that's great. I think the people that buy it day one won't be upset, right? I just don't need to buy it day one. Will it be as big as the original Switch? I don't think it can, just because that system was massive. It's kind of like trying to compare, this is a bad example, but Wii U to the Wii. The Wii sold so much, there was just no way the Wii U was ever going to compare to that in sales. But I don't think it has to. I don't think it's going to have the same fate as the Wii U. I think it's going to be very successful. I just don't think it's possible for it to match the Switch just because the Switch sold so much. I do still think it's going to be a huge success. All right, guys, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Are you going to buy it day one? And do you think it's going to be a success? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.